Welcome, Internet, to the PixelPlay Podcast, your weekly gaming podcast where your buddies get together to talk about all things going on in video games. I am one of your hosts, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, joined as always by my co-host Adam at CS Radical and Chris at Gin and Chris. This week we got an email from one of our fans asking about graveyard games and which ones are some of our favorites, so we thought we'd talk about that. With that being said, though, if you like anything that we do, you can find any of our podcasts. We've been doing this for over 3 years now. You can find them over at linktr.ee/PixelPlay Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, wherever. We do it on video as well, if you want to see our lovely faces. But, gentlemen, it's been a little while. I was off last week. I had a cold, and I sound like a 50-year-old lunch lady. So I didn't podcast. Chris, you were gone. Adam, you were holding down the fort all by yourself, so thank you for doing that. So
look, I'm just glad that you finally got to learn what Unicorn Overlord was.
Yeah, I thought it was like something along the lines of like Animal Well or something, and it's like, no, it's JRPG trash.
No,
so.
it's my trash.
I did enjoy seeing that comment in the Discord. Where also join our Discord, everyone, because it's very funny in there. Because Adam will post the actual imagery of Unicorn Overlord, and Kaylan goes, "What? That's what it is."
That's
by
what
actual imagery. Do you mean just images of the 7-foot tall Amazon girl? Because yes,
that was the second one. It was the dancing mage girl.
Yeah, that too.
No one stands like that.
Look, Vanillaware has only one speed, and it's sex appeal, and that's it.
I just everyone was like, man, Unicorn Overlord is such an awesome game, and I'm like, I should check this out, and then I'm like, nah. I immediately bounced as soon as I saw
I mean, also you don't have the time for it, so
no.
It does seem like it's a big game.
Yeah. Speaking of games, what have you guys been playing?
I was actually going to ask, since obviously you guys both missed last week's episode, what did you think about the stuff that Xbox showed off?
I just watched it today because I am behind on life. I am very excited, actually, for some of the stuff, but especially Expedition 33.
Yeah.
That game, turn-based JRPG that, maybe Kaylan will like. I don't know. Is it Plague Tale? Is it a JRPG? No one knows. I don't know. Yeah,
that was one that I was I wasn't sold on it, but I was getting a lot of that Flintlock Siege of Dawn kind of vibe to it, and I was
that was the fucking game.
Not saying that I'm definitely gonna love it, but it's on Game Pass. I'll download it and check it out. For me though, Doom Dark Age looks amazing.
I will say, for those who didn't watch last week's podcast, everybody knows that I haven't really been too big on the Doom games. After that Developer Digital, that is my most look forward to game right now. Because the fact that it's a slower game and there are options to actually slow it down now, I looked at that and went, okay, I can actually approach this at the level I want to now, rather than it being... Because the thing that with Doom Eternal especially, it's just way too much movement.
Doom Eternal is not I will argue that Doom 2016 is a masterpiece of gaming. I did not like Doom Eternal. I felt Doom Eternal was a detraction. The platforming was kind of ruined it, and I felt like a lot of the stuff didn't really work with Doom Eternal. Whereas 2016, I will pick that game up at any time and play it. Whereas Doom Eternal, I don't want to. And it seems like Dark Age takes more, leans more towards Doom 2016. And what really captured me, where they were that idea of you start in a corner and you work your way out to commanding the level.
It's almost like a literal and metaphorical grounded approach, where it's way less about what you're doing long range, so much as here's your shield and just push your way through.
Yes. Yeah. Which was very much what Doom 2016 was as well. Doom 2016 was, you are at point A, you got to get to point B, and in between is just noise, and you have to just get through it.
Yeah.
Whereas I found Doom Eternal was hey, jump around these parts and everything, and
it got way too much in I don't know if either of you've played Ghost Runner before.
Yes.
It's one of those where it's just it's too much. The movement is just, it's too fast. It's too easy to make a mistake or go somewhere else where you don't really you can't control the way that you kind of want it to. Whereas it seems like with Dark Ages, even if without turning the game speed down, I also like that you can turn it up to 150%. So if y'all still want to go nuts, you can do it. But it just seems like it's more of an approach of, hey, you're more trying to defend yourself rather than literally like ADHD yourself around the map.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to Doom Eternal Captain America, but make it sexy. Like, just that shield, I want to use it. I want to do
rip and tear.
And they keep saying it's like only one button prompt too. So is it like press and hold the button and you protect, and press it once and you throw it, or if you're about to parry, press it once?
How it would work.
Yeah, like that's actually kind of cool, because sometimes the games are just way too complicated with all the different, like, this is how you throw the shield, this is how you hold it. Like the one button, I think that could work really well.
Yeah, like it's definitely got my attention, and obviously, like, me being super enthusiastic about a Doom game again is amazing for me. Like, if I had to tier it, it's Doom now at the top, and then Clear Obscura Expedition 33 would be just below it. I'm very nervous about it now, just because, like, I said it during the show, Chris, like the thing where they show like just the massive list of perks you can attach.
It's a lot.
I looked at that and went, I'm going to wait until this game has some time to come out so I can just see the guys that says, use this, because I ain't got time to spend exploring this shit.
Oh, yeah.
And then after
that's
that...
way too many perks.
I'm already blanking on the name, which is not a good sign. Obviously not Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden 4 is at the bottom because I know that game's going to kick my ass and I'll quit it after an hour.
I'm glad it's there, but...
What's the like New Orleans, like southern game called?
South of Midnight.
Thank you.
South of Midnight, yeah.
That one... I looked at immediately and went, this just looks like every other third-person action game I've seen for the last little while. This looks like Forspoken with a different art style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Guys, we're talking, I was going to say, talking Xbox, we are like 12 days away from Avowed.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It's suddenly going to get real busy on Game Pass.
Yeah, like that's just coming up.
What a terrible problem to have. Too many games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck. I'm already still playing Octopath Traveler 2 on the Xbox, and that's taking forever. Game's way too big. So good, though. God.
I got a funny story I got to share with you guys. So Shoppers is obviously getting out of, and we're Canadian, so like Shoppers Drug Mart's like basically our CVS for our American listeners, but they're getting out of the video game industries, like video game space. And so I was there the one day, and all their Xbox and PlayStation games were $10.
What?
And so, yeah. So I was going through and I was collecting it. But then I'm like, there's nothing I want. Like, none of the games are there. But what I ended up doing is I ended up pulling up the GameStop trade-in values, and I was just searching each one. I ended up trading in like $30 worth of games for $60 in store credit towards Assassin's Creed. I was like very proud of myself.
You should be proud of yourself.
Yeah, but when are you going to play it? It's going to get delayed again soon.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's paid for now.
I'm just waiting for them to delay it by like 4 days. Like just another delay, but it's just meaningless. Like,
I'm just
why
waiting
are you
for them
even
to
bothered?
cancel it and say, sorry guys, we were actually making it a live service game. It didn't tell you, but we realized that wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
That's another game coming out.
So Chris, you were playing Octopath Traveler. What else have you been playing lately?
So I'm still behind on, since we didn't podcast for a while, some of the games that I have beaten, because I'm playing a lot of games right now, but I'm not going to talk about them yet because they're all at like, some of them are at the like 80 to 90% done, and I'm so close, but I just won't focus on it and I'll go play something else. It's really weird. But one game I did play and beat and did want to talk about was the Skyward Sword HD re-release that was on the Switch.
Yeah.
And the reason I want to talk about it is because it's a very, to me, divisive title, I would say. Because the controls are all over the place. Like, it's something where it's like, I really enjoyed it. I think I even came into the Discord asking if people had been playing it and what they thought about it and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys remember, because that would have been back in like November or December of last year. But it's just because the controls were a little weird. Like, it wasn't, I understand what they were trying to do, but to kind of give a little context here, is it's a re-release of a Wii game, and the Wii game was full motion controls. I did buy it the day it came out when it was on the Wii. It came with the special attachment for the controller to make it even more motion controlled. I took a week off from work and just played it. And back then, that was tough for that game because I remember I had to play the entire thing standing up. If I played sitting down, the motion controls didn't work as well because the TV, like the Wii had that weird bar you had to have and all that. So for an entire week, I was in my 20s, so it was a little bit easier to do with my back, but I played for an entire week standing up in front of my TV, beginning to end, playing Skyward Sword. And I remember finishing it, and I was like, that was like a 10 out of 10 game. Then as years went on, I was like, I don't actually think it's as good as I remember, because like, why did we need yet another prequel even before Ganondorf and all of that with Ocarina of Time, which was kind of like what started everything story-wise. All the other games took place after. So I was like, I got to go back and play this. I actually have to see. I'm very curious with the actual controls now being mapped to buttons and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, the game is extremely divisive. I can guarantee you that if you took a room of 100 people, 50 people would be like, I love what they did with the button controls and I love it. And the other half would be like, I cannot for the life of me play this game. You can still do the motion controls if you want. Like you can take the Joy-Con controller off and play it like you did on the Wii. But I mean, I don't want to fucking do that ever again. Like I'm done with the Wii. It was fun, but playing through a 40 to 50 hour game full motion controls like that, I don't want to do it. So how they did it with this game is it's the right joystick that is actually now your sword. It's not a button like A or anything like that. So if you want to swipe at an enemy, you have to flick the right joystick in the direction that you want to swing the sword. Because throughout the entire game, there was no way around this. Like if you played, what was the first Zelda game that came out on Wii? Twilight Princess. You just could fling the Wii remote around and it swung the sword, but it was like normal. The game also released on GameCube, so there was no directional stuff. It was just like you swing the sword like you'd hit the A button. In Skyward Sword, I don't know if either of you played it, when you'd go up to enemies, they would like hold up a defense like this, so you had to swipe left to right in order to damage them. If you swiped any other way, they'd reflect it. And the whole game, every boss, everything was built around that concept that you have to actually swing in a specific direction. Enemies, puzzles, that kind of stuff. So they couldn't just erase it for this game and make it like press A to attack. So you're going up to enemies and you're surrounded by a bunch of them. And you're holding like the ZR button to lock on, but then you're also flicking the right joystick in certain directions to try and like go and hit enemies in the proper area to actually damage them. And there was 3 separate times playing this game that I put it down and I vowed that I was done with it. That I am not going to be frustrated by this anymore because it was freaking tough for a while. Sometimes you'd have just like 3 lizard characters in front of you with a sword and shield, and you had to hit them in a very specific direction, and I would flick in that direction, but it wouldn't register exactly as I did it. It would be like either more up or more down, and it wouldn't work, and then I would die. And then it would load like an old school game where there's no autosave, and all of a sudden I'm back at the most recent save I did, and I got to get myself back there and try again. So I ended up actually playing through and beating it, and by the end, like the ending part, I thought was still very epic, and I think that's why I thought the game was a 10 out of 10 back when I played it. The ending was like incredibly good, but I have to tell you that the journey through that game is rough. The puzzles are great, the dungeons are great, but my God, those controls, like even with putting them to buttons and everything, I have to warn everybody listening to this podcast, it is a challenge to sometimes get through it. You may love it, but holy heck, if anybody is thinking of playing it, like be prepared that for 40 hours, you might be just like really pissed off at your right joystick for flicking it in the wrong direction. Also, not very comfortable. And I'm not talking like holding the Switch and everything like that. I just mean playing an entire action game using the right joystick in different directions as your mode of attack instead of just pressing X or A or
it's like
whatever.
Normally the camera to us these days.
Yes. And that's another thing. The camera is not the right joystick now. So to move the camera, you have to hold L1 and then move the right joystick. So you're constantly using the right joystick. Hold L1, move the let go, now start attacking still with the right joystick. And there was I made the first mistake was I left the game for like 3 months and came back. I could not for the life of me remember how to do anything. It's not like a normal action game where I'm like, all right, what buttons jump? What ones attack? Okay, I found it. No, like I had to like go into the settings of the game and look at the controls to really, really, really figure out what to do. So yeah, without a normal camera, locking on was a little weird because again, they might be behind you. You got to hold L1, move the camera. Now you can lock on and start flicking the right joystick. It could be really, really, really rough. Now, some stuff, definitely a huge improvement. In the original game, you had this little beetle character or thing which could like hit switches and pick up items at a distance. On the Wii, you'd press the button and then you held your like Wii remote like this and had to like move it like you were the Beetle. It was weird. In this, it's just gyro controls. You just move the switch up and down and you're moving the thing. Fantastic. Anytime I had to use that, it was like flawless. I was able to do puzzles that were really hard on the Wii. They're almost too easy now on the Switch because they added that. But yeah, the combat itself was easily just flawed. And I get I don't blame Nintendo now for it, because how the heck else are you going to do it without just changing the entire game?
For an entire different control scheme, so.
Yeah.
Well, that's why like I'm curious if we're going to see particularly the Wii library like not age well, cuz I like that's the same problem that you have with like the Mario Galaxy games, is that like they are dependent on the Wii waggle.
Yes.
And it's not going to translate well as we move further and further away from the motion controls.
Not
of
a
Wii.
lot of stuff is probably going to age nearly that. Like the Wii Sports stuff will be fine, but like a lot of games that incorporate any part of that motion control is not going to age well.
No, unless they force it to be where you have to literally remove the Joy-Cons and play like you originally did on the Wii. Mm-hmm. But not a lot of people want to do that. The way that most people play their Switch is actually portable, and they even have a Switch that doesn't have removable Joy-Cons, a Switch Lite. So you have to play with the actual button
Not to mention, you don't really want to be playing games that are built for motion controls when you're taking it on the road. No one really wants to see you on the bus trying to slash things.
I mean, you wouldn't be the weirdest person on the bus.
No,
definitely.
But
not.
Usually being the second weirdest person on the bus isn't that great either.
It's kind of worse for some reason.
Adam, what about you? What have you been playing lately?
We're almost finally caught up in all my reviews, so I'm going to put two together because they kind of just work out really, really well, because they're both sort of crime-based. So the first one I ended up playing was this small indie game called The Operator, which was essentially like a sort of you working for, let's say, the CIA, but not actually the CIA, where you're sort of like hacking using databases and trying to find out certain things. So like you're like, one of the first missions is like, hey, this person got murdered. You need to figure out who it was based on like facial recognition and scanning around items to try to like match them up with certain profiles and such. And like, it's a very short game. It starts to get into a little more of the conspiracy stuff, like, oh, are you actually being targeted now that you're, within the CIA? Is somebody trying to get a hold of you? There's a hacker trying to help you, but are they helping you, or are they actually just trying to fool you into getting something? And it's a cute little thing. Like, again, it's like maybe a couple hours. It's not going to take too much time. I thought it was pretty decent as like a proof of concept. If it was something that they took further and kind of built something with a little more of a cohesive narrative too, I think you could do something really cool with it. But like, I found it was perfectly average. Like, I give it maybe a 7 out of 10 tops. Like, I don't think it does anything too well. A lot of these games I've played before, they all either play similarly or they get way too complicated. This found like a good balance where I didn't feel like I was doing too much guesswork. This one, I just say the end half of the story it got really, really rushed, and then the ending is just really not satisfying, so it just didn't really hit as well as like, I'm trying to remember what the game that I reviewed last year that was kind of like that. I just can't think of the name of it, but it had a much more good story, and the serious tone of it really hit better then. I just can't think of the name of it for the life of me now, but either way. The other one I played was, how for some reason, like, I just got really, really into TCG Card Shop Simulator, just because I'm like, you know what? I want to do work without actually being paid for it. So I found my new version of that, which was Crime Scene Cleaner, which is essentially, if you guys remember Viscera Cleanup Detail.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just that, but you're cleaning up crime scenes for the mob. And
it's like a darker version of Power Wash Simulator.
Yeah, and in all honesty, like, it's the kind of game that it's just, look, I really just want to turn my brain off and just for a half an hour just wipe some blood away. And honestly, it did that. I was surprised how much I stuck with it. I think just because of the nature of like the mob ties and how like even the guy who admits is like, man, why am I doing this? But he's like, he's too deep. He can't get out of it now. And it's very tongue-in-cheek kind of fun. And it does, again, like, it's just, like, I don't know why these games really work with me all that well. I think it's, again, that OCD part of my brain that just wants to just see everything get cleaned up because I hate messes. So it's probably just that little bit. Viscera cleanup detail was very similar to that. But it just worked out really, really nicely. It's like a good like chill game just to not really think too hard about. Because, you know, after Unicorn Overlord, I needed a break from games that were just testing my brain or making me work for stuff. So instead I did something, it's like, look, I can hold down the mouse key and just clean up blood. I can do that. Or just throw shit, break it, or just kind of the best thing, honestly. In some missions, depending on where you are, there is just a bin where you throw trash and bodies. And I just started realizing, like, no, you can't just gently place a body into this bin. I started trying to Kobe stuff from like different floors into the bin and just seeing if I could do that from a distance. And it's the kind of thing, it's like, wow, this is really I'm such a terrible person that I'm taking this person that was fucking murdered and just seeing if I can like 3-point shot them from across the room into this bin. But fuck it. I'm enjoying myself. No one's going to judge me. And
in your defense, they can't get more dead.
No.
Yeah, they can't.
I mean, it thankfully doesn't create more mess because, you know, God only knows that there'd be more blood or like broken bones going around. But nope, not a thing you got to worry about. So it's fine. I would rate it maybe an 8. I think it just did everything that I wanted to. If you're the type of person that's into these sort of like job simulator games, I think this does really, really well. It does have some like secrets in each level. So it is kind of like from a perspective of like trying to figure out where like there might be some secrets hidden. Like there's some puzzles once in a blue moon. There's maybe some platforming, trying to figure out like where an extra spot is. And there are a couple of levels that actually do something that isn't just, you know, cleaning up a crime scene. There's one that legitimately was spooking the shit out of me because it's like this sort of like cleaning up sort of a cult murder scene, and it does like some creepy stuff in the background. So like there is a bit of variance to it. It's not just, you know, just here's a bunch of dead mobsters, go clean up the mess. There is some like interesting stuff with a few bits of it, but for the most part, it's just take a mop, go nuts. And I got more than I ever wanted out of that. I'm surprised. Like it's actually a lot longer than you would expect to. There's a lot. I'd say it's like 6-7 hours, maybe a little bit more than that, just because there's a couple levels at the end that get really, really long. Like most levels are 20 to 30 minutes. The last two are like hour plus because they're just massive. Like there's one where it's a museum and there's like 12 bodies. It's just a lot. So, but it honestly, if you're just looking for something to just kind of like turn your brain off for a half an hour and do a level, it works. And just putting on some music worked out nicely.
I feel like there's a missed opportunity of not making this like a John Wick game where you're just cleaning up after John Wick.
I mean, I think Viscera Cleanup Detail did like stuff where it did like a Shadow Warrior DLC where it was like cleaning up from like other game properties. So like, yeah, I'm sure there is something like look, I'm pretty sure some of these scenes that I walked into might as well just be a John Wick scene with the way that these guys are just methodically gunned down. But yeah. Cool little aside. So next week I'll finally be caught up. I have one more game that I got left to review.
Nice. Excited to hear it.
Other than that, I'm playing Persona 3 Reload and just having a blast with that. So
nice.
Kaylan, what are you
for me, I'm slowly like surprisingly having kids really cuts in on gaming time.
Shocking.
No, I know.
It's not true. False news.
Honestly, you just need to get good.
Apply myself. I'm still working my way through Dragon Age. It is slow going. It's not got the hooks in me. I don't know what's going on. I don't care. The combat seems kind of flat. Like, I'm still playing it. I got nothing else to play right now. I'm kind of, like I said, we're waiting for Avowed, waiting for Assassin's Creed. So I'm going to keep going through it. But the moment something else comes along, I'm probably going to jump out and maybe come back. Well,
there's a good
eventually.
thing there's like a shit ton of games coming out the next few months on Xbox alone. So
right. Other than that, I've been playing Zelda Link, not Link's Awakening, Echoes of Wisdom. I am almost done that game. Man, that game, like 10 out of 10. This game is perfect.
Yeah.
Like, unless it really like fails on the dismount and shatters its ankle, like this game is a 10 out of 10. It is fantastic. I absolutely love it. It very much has a feeling of A Link to the Past, but I like the creative aspects of how you're using the echoes. Like I was in this one boss level, not a boss level, but I was in this one room where I was dealing with some wolves that constantly come after you, and I could have used an echo that like could have done fire or could have done a projectile or whatever. And all I did is I just put these little spiky guys around me. I just made a little barrier and I just let the dogs keep running into me until they all died. And it's just like, man, what a cool thing that like there's probably a million ways I could have solved that problem and didn't. I'm also role playing that Princess Zelda's a witch, and my go-to echo I use is just a bunch of crows, and I just summon crows all the time. Like, and so I'm just playing the like. There's this myth going around of this like princess who might be a witch who might be a princess who just has an army of crows that just swarms after everybody. I love it. So, yeah. And then with my son, we were at the library and we ended up taking out a couple Lego games. So we've been playing Lego City Undercover 2. And surprisingly, that game's a bit of a banger. Like, we're having a good time with it. My wife and I, we played Lego City, not Lego City, we played Lego Marvel Avengers. And I think that is one of the best, if not the best Lego game of all time. And this has a very similar feel. You're in a city, there's lots to do, you're going through missions. It's honestly pretty good. I would like highly recommend it if you've got some kids and they're into Lego, they're into Lego City, they're into police, kind of stuff. It's great. And like we're playing it and he's playing and you can change into costumes. So I'll change into a bad guy outfit, like a criminal outfit. He's a police officer and he'll chase me through the city. We'll spend time just like finding cars and putting them in parking lots. Like there's a lot of things just to screw around with while we're playing. So it's been a kind of fun Saturday morning kind of game.
I don't know if you ever mentioned, have you played the Horizon Lego game? Because I put a couple hours into it. Like it's not my type of game, but it was a little bit of fun for what I did play of it.
No, I haven't played it yet. We've got a whole backlog of Lego games to play, and I'm probably gonna check it out at some point. But he just saw police and city and that whole thing, and it just pulled at his strings. So we're playing that.
Yeah, I want to play the Lego Horizon one eventually, but my Lego backlog's like 10 Lego games, 11. Like,
well, they come out with like 3 a year,
and I bought all of them on Steam. When I got Steam, I bought every single one available. I got like Lego's Pirates of the Caribbean I have to play. Like there are so many that I just have. And I'm like, I don't even care about that franchise anymore. Oh my God, when did I buy this? Does it have controller support? I don't know.
Yeah. Guys, jumping into like what we're talking about this week, I wanted to share that we got an email from one of our listeners. Sean out in Winnipeg emailed us and he says, "Hey guys, love the show. I wanted to reach out to ask you guys, he's been playing Gek, like the old Nintendo 64 Gek game. Yeah, and he was like, "Man, I remember this game. It's been a while since we played it, and I want to hear from you guys. What are some games that you played that may have been forgotten, series that have been forgotten, basically graveyard games that have been abandoned? What are some that you remember fondly that you'd love to play again, or just want to give a shout out to?" So, Sean, I wanted to bring that question to the team. Like, guys, what are some what we're going to call graveyard games? Games that are kind of dead, maybe had one-offs, maybe series that had its moment in the sun, but have basically faded from memory. So we're not looking for things like Infamous. We're not looking for games that are quite popular, everyone knows, but just haven't been made. But what are some ones that have been forgotten to the sands of time of gaming?
So right off the bat, the one that comes to mind, and it's the reason that most people have forgotten about it is because, well, Kojima's made so many other games that people have forgotten that he made these. But if anybody remembers the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 series Zone of the Enders.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a sort of like, I guess, if Kojima made a Gundam game. And they are amazing games. And it's like I know they did an HD remastering of the Second Runner recently. So like it's not totally forgotten, but like, how many people talk about this game anymore? I don't think that many do. Even with the remastering, I don't think a lot of people are really paying that much attention to it because, well, Kojima's not doing that anymore. And It's one of those games that, like, it's different from, because obviously most Gundam games are generally either multiplayer stuff or it's just go around and just, it's almost like Dynasty Warriors. A lot of those games kind of get made too. Whereas Zone of the Enders was very much like a story-focused Gundam game with some pretty incredible battle. Like it was definitely ahead of its time, and I think that's also why it didn't stick, because this probably would have worked way better in like the PS3, PS4 era, where there could have been a little bit more you could have done with it. But that's just one of those, like, every time I see anything relating to the Second Runner, I go, my God, that was a game that I pushed, because that game is not easy either. That was like one of those games that it was so good that I was okay with it kicking my ass. Because I'm like, you know what? This controls so goddamn well that I'm willing to just die over and over again to this boss because I'm having a blast anyway. Because just being able to fly around, whether you're gunning or using melee, just going across the map and just pulling off fucking beams and just friggin' javeling it at people too. Like the way that combat was structured back then was just, like I said, it feels like a game that was made 5+ years too early to really catch on. And like, man, you could make a fun Soulsborne game with this kind of stuff too. Like, you know what? Where's From Software with the super like Gundam sci-fi sort of Soulsborne game? There we go. There's the next big thing.
That'd be cool.
Well, I guess Armored Core technically already exists, but you know.
Yeah, true, I guess.
Chris, why don't you go to some of your favorite graveyard games?
I'm going to take one that I need to say before Adam steals it from me.
It's not Chrono, is it? Because it's not forgotten.
It's not forgotten. I can't.
Well, Square's forgotten about it, but
they keep re-releasing it just enough where it's like I have access to it, so I can't say it's that. But one game that you literally can't play unless you have an emulator, and they haven't made any new games in the series, is Mystical Ninja starring Gomon. Like, it's like most people in defense, not everybody knows about this game. That's probably why they stopped making them, whatever. But I think there was 3 games in total. There was a Super Nintendo game called like Mystical Ninja. And then the N64 3D platformer, which is when I got into the series, Mystical Ninja starring Gomon. I talked about it on the podcast either last year or the year before. I was able to get a copy of it on my Steam Deck to play, which was a lot of fun. They had one side-scrolling platformer multiplayer game. I think it was 4-player, also on the N64, like Gomon's Adventure or something like that.
Gomon's Great Adventure, yeah.
Yeah.
So the series is way more than 3, but we only got 3 releases in the West.
Okay, fine. Well, are they releasing them now? Because I feel like I need one. And
no, the last one was like 2005 on the DS in Japan, so it's been a while.
Okay. Yeah, like this, you can't play this game. It's just nowhere.
Oh, I lied. Pachinko machines in 2009.
Oh, come on, man.
Because that's what happens to anything we like now in Japan, where they're just like, hey, I heard you like that Silent Hill. And then they finally released Silent Hill 2 again. But like for the longest time, it was like, here's a pachinko machine of that. And we're like, fuck you.
Yeah. Like, damn it. Why'd you have to get me all excited? I was like, something's coming.
Because I love doing that.
It's not. But it sucks because it's such a fun game. It oozes charm. It's colorful, very N64, obviously. And that's kind of what a lot of games were like. But it's just such a good time. Like, I went back to it only last year or the year before, and I enjoyed every moment of it. I enjoyed it way more than most of the other games that are coming out now. Like, it's just actually a fun game that's like slightly open world-ish and everything too, back on the N64, which is crazy. Yeah, not only is the game dead because you can't play it anywhere, the series has been dead for a while, and it's one of my number one. It's not my number one on this list. You guys might even be able to guess that once I get there, but it's definitely number 2 on my list for games that series, whatever, that I need back. I need it.
Yeah, it's a game I actually I played sometime, I want to say in the fall last year, and like I still enjoy it. Like obviously it's a quirky Japanese game. It's very fucking weird because, well, that's just Japan in a nutshell. They can't help themselves. But like, as a game, like as a 3D platformer in terms of the N64 version, like I don't think it's aged that badly. Like it's obviously 3D platformers are going to be a little bit weird in the early days in terms of how they control, but like I still have a good time playing it, and it's not like ridiculously challenging. It doesn't feel like it's, you know, really heavy on the workload to try to make it control well. Like I felt like it was pretty good. The only complaint that I had is, you remember the big boss battles where you're like in the giant mech, right?
Yeah.
It takes way too long to get through those boss battles. The HP on that boss is like a Destiny 2 level sponge. It was ridiculous. So there's stuff like that where I'm like, all right, there's some things that I can nitpick about it now, but like, yeah, I even just in like a HD remastering just to kind of clean it up a little bit. I'd love to just play another one of those again, but
yeah,
obviously they haven't done anything in Japan in over 20 years either for it, so the odds of that happening is pretty low because even Japan doesn't seem to have much of an interest in that series either.
Well, they're all crazy because this is peak gaming. Peak. That's what it is.
Yeah. And also, like the Super Nintendo one, like is actually aged pretty decently as well. Like that game is a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I gave that one a go with a friend of the show, Kevin, and it was hard as hell, but a lot of fun.
A lot of those games were, yeah.
Yeah. All right, Kaylan, what do you got? Let's hear yours.
The first one that jumps out to me is a game from the Xbox era, an EA game actually.
What?
And it's Freedom Fighters. If you guys remember that.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that game. I feel like I just remember because like you start off like as like a one guy with like a neighbor, and like you just slowly start liberating your town. I even forget what you're liberating them from, whether it's like communists, terrorists, whatever. But I just remember like going through and doing like all the missions and stuff, and for whatever reason, like I just remember that series, and I remember it being cool at the time, and I'm just, I don't necessarily say we need to make a new one or anything like that, but at the time I was just like, man, this is such a fun game, and I feel like it doesn't get brought up a lot, and it's actually pretty good for what it is.
Oh, I completely forgot about that game until now. Like,
yeah,
I don't think I've thought of this in like 20 years. Like, yeah. I don't know how long it's been. That's crazy.
It's a weird era because like this is like EA when EA was at peak. It wasn't just sports games and stuff, and like
it wasn't copy and paste.
Yeah, like you travel from like different bases in different cities to like to go liberate different parts of the city and stuff, and it's just such a great game. Like third person action adventure.
Yeah.
It's definitely got that like early Xbox PS2 like adventure, like the Max Payne sort of era.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So that's one for me that kind of stood out as a game that's been forgotten and maybe, should get a little bit more attention than it has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the next one that comes to mind for me, we talk about how like right now there's a lot of stories going around with BioWare in that they've been moving a bunch of their people around from the Dragon Age team to try to put all hands on deck for Mass Effect, which, man, I'm gonna play it, but I'm not excited to be playing it because I know I'm gonna not like it. But to think about like how there were games that did the adventure game, third-person action shooter, sort of with choose your own adventure sort of vibes to it, your choices matter dialogue. The fact that no one talks about Alpha Protocol drives me crazy.
Right, that was the other one I was looking at.
Alpha Protocol is a game that I don't know why no one's tried to replicate in the last like 10 years, especially because it's a spy thriller where your choices matter. That if there's any game that is designed for those your choice matter things, you'd think being a spy would be the big one where it does. And
you could suck ass at shooting. Like you can like not have specs into guns.
To be fair, the game also sucked ass at shooting. It wasn't one of its strong suits, but
it just didn't have the stats.
Yeah,
it just didn't have the stats.
and it was a game that did something. It was such a difference because obviously, like you had Dragon Age at that point, you had Knights of the Republic, you had Mass Effect. Like BioWare was in full swing at this point, and Alpha Protocol came and said, "Well, what if we did this like modern day rather than it being a fantasy or a sci-fi?" And we went, "Oh, that's an interesting idea." And this is before like you started seeing like your slice of life versions of this, like your Life is Strange's and your Telltale games, where this was still like more focusing on still some level of gameplay. So it was like taking Metal Gear Solid and putting like, the theme, like a BioWare, cover on top of it. And it honestly worked out really well. Like it's not a game that's going to have aged nearly as well. Like I said, the gameplay is not great for what it was at the time even, but like as a concept, like the fact that no one's tried to do that really pisses me off because spy games are like something honestly that are in short supply. Like the fact that like we're still waiting for whatever this new Bond project is and still don't really know anything about it is starting to really frustrate me because like apart from what? Metal Gear Solid 5? Like what else do we have right now? We don't really have like a good spy game right now. I know Kaylan's like I know which one Kaylan would like to see, but Ubisoft is also not listening to them very much, so
no. Well, I think one of the cool things with Alpha Protocol 2 is that like your choices mattered and like you could like take henchmen and then turn them onto your side and then like the final boss battle, they're there to help you or they're not. Like it wasn't one of those like where it was just scripted. Like the choices you made did impact how the game progressed.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good one.
All we really wanted was to get dominated by that really big muscular Russian girl. Let's be real.
I always remember the coked out the dance floor level. That's like the boss fight that I always remember.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Solid game. I wish there'd be more of stuff like that, or even just more spy games in general, man.
Yeah.
I miss like both third person and first person. Like I miss my Nightfire and Agent Under Fire Bond games, and I also miss like even just like your Metal Gear Solid and Splinter Cells. Like I'm missing ones that is just single player, just try to clear the room. I know Hitman exists, but like Hitman I find to be a bit on the checkbox plus really like wacky at times side, whereas like I want something that's just pure unadulterated stealth spy thriller gameplay.
Yeah. Well, mine is going to take a bit of a turn here into, I guess, the JRPG-ish side. So this, Kaylan, this won't be for you.
I'm out.
Adam,
I'm checking out.
Adam, I know this is definitely one for you.
Okay, what console?
PlayStation 1, Game Boy Advance, PSP.
Ooh. Parasite Eve?
No, that's a good pick, though. I wish I wrote that down. That's a good one.
Oh,
someone
Tactics.
can steal that. Final Fantasy Tactics. What the actual fuck is going on, Square Enix? The only way you can the only way you can play the original Final Fantasy Tactics is on mobile right now, where they have like the re-release they put on PSP. So they took the PSP game and put it on mobile. It's not even on PC, just like thrown on the Steam store or anything. So the original Tactics is my favorite. That's the one that I just would love to play to this day. I wish Square would just re-release it. I don't even need anything else.
Nah, let's be real. If they're going to re-release it, it better be an Octopath Traveler graphic style.
Fine, do that. Fine. Because they've done that with their other games. They have Tactics Ogre, which was on Super Nintendo. Then that went on to PSP and stuff. And now that's on Steam and Switch and PlayStation with that Tactics Ogre. I can't remember what it was called. But either way, they re-released it in that 2.5D Octopath Traveler kind of look. And they've done Triangle Strategy, which is just Final Fantasy Tactics without the Final Fantasy name. It's literally the exact same thing.
Was the Diofel Chronicle also one of those?
Yes, I think so. I'm pretty sure that was also. I don't know if it was I don't think it was the 2.5D graphics, but it was a tactics RPG. So they keep making Final Fantasy Tactics without calling it Final Fantasy Tactics. They had the one on PS1, which was my favorite. Adam, you know the Final Fantasy Tactics Advance games. Those were
Advance
great.
Is the one I swear by.
Yeah, those were great too. Like I played those back in the day. And then on PSP, all they did is that's where they re-released Final Fantasy Tactics, the original, as War of the Lions. So they added some cutscenes, apparently like broke the game, like the loading times and everything was just absolutely atrocious. And you'd go to use a spell and the game would go down to like 5 frames per second. So it was very flawed, apparently. I never played that one, but like that's the last time we got a tactics, like an official Final Fantasy Tactics game. And like they were so good. They were like Game of Thrones with Final Fantasy and like as a chess game instead of just turn-based. You could like obviously you pick your characters and what class they are. They have special, their attacks. For anybody who's played a tactics game, we're talking the Fire Emblems and stuff like that. It's all very similar. But yeah, like you move the characters around the board and you do your attacks and it's strategic and it's so fun. And Square Enix, some of their best games they've made recently are not their like AAA games that are Forspoken, which obviously is awful. And even just the newer Final Fantasies are like good, but not great. And sometimes even fairly flawed. But every time they do these 2.5D tactics games where they're just basically making a new Final Fantasy Tactics, they're amazing. Everybody loves them. They score well. They sell well. And I just don't understand why they aren't making a Final Fantasy one. Bring that kind of character back in. Try bring that like universe back into that because they absolutely could. Whether it's a re-release of these ones or what.
What I'm understanding is you want another action Final Fantasy game, right? That's Square in a nutshell.
No. That's literally the opposite. That's why I'm so frustrated. If all the other Final Fantasies
we
were
keep
still
saying,
really
guys,
good.
Where's our tactics? Where's our turn-based? And they're like, so faster action.
More
this time around, we were like, okay,
with...
guys, like, can we get like a turn-based game of any kind? And they'd be like, so you want it more like Souls combat?
You want Souls combat. You want a Godzilla action game. Got it. Where you play as a giant monster fighting another giant monster. Great.
And also where there's no one likable.
Yeah, they've also had that. But yeah, like I don't get it. Like there's just these games are so good. It's chess where you get to pick your characters. And they got hard and it was fun to actually like try and figure it out.
I'm convinced
Series
Final
that's been
Fantasy
dead for too
17 is just going to be like a platinum game level, like fucking action combat game where it's just over the top stuff now. And it'll be like, guys, what are we anymore?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so that's mine. Final
Well,
Fantasy Tactics.
that was part 2 of the JRPG corner. Hey, Kaylan, what else you got?
So there's like 2 I'm going to put in the same category because they're very similar. So the 2 that I say, once again, sticking with the Xbox era, because I mean Xbox is just neglecting all of their IP. But one is Crimson Skies, and the other one in that same vein is a Ubisoft game called Blazing Angels, which is like a World War II style action sort of aerial combat game. And I feel like the aerial combat dogfighting games are just kind of lost and forgotten. And both of these are really cool for different reasons. Blazing Angels has a really cool gray aesthetic, whereas Crimson Skies has like this kind of retro futuristic creative like pilot kind of like airplanes, and I just think it's really cool. And I just remember like playing in like this idealized version of like Chicago and going in and shooting up like the city and stuff. It was like not shooting up the city, but doing like the multiplayer in that vein. Like it's such a good series, and I kind of feel like it's lost and forgotten. And I can't imagine that these games are hard or expensive to make, and this would be one that's like, hey, make it quick, make it cheap, and you could make a quick buck, and you could have a pretty good game on your hands. So,
but why do that when we can spend $300 million on an overpriced graphical crazy game and then market it to hell and then get really, really mad when it only sells 5 million copies?
Right? I feel like Crimson Skies could do so well.
I completely agree. And I think that you're spot on too with the like difficult to make and stuff. Because there's Ace Combat 7, which is obviously a much more realistic, like fighter jet kind of game. That game was a very early release on the Nintendo Switch, Ace Combat, and it looks comparable to other consoles, like how it did, and it like runs at like 60 FPS and stuff. Because there's nowhere near as many assets as you need on the screen and everything to make these work. It's kind of like racing games, how it's a lot easier to just make them look so beautiful because you're only loading in so much, right?
You make a skybox.
Yeah, you make a skybox. Like, I think they could make a game like that, and it wouldn't be too expensive or hard, and you could throw it on everything. You put it on the Switch, the PlayStation, the Xbox, on PC. Everybody could just play and make it online, too. You can have, like, dogfight with like people on any console and everything. Got a person at the airport on their Switch playing some guy on his PlayStation back home. Woo.
Yeah,
I would love that.
Have you ever played the Panzer Dragoon games? Because they're kind of like that, but like fantasy wise.
I have not played Panzer Dragoon.
That might be something you might want to take a look at too, because they're kind of in the same vibe, but they're more like you're riding a dragon instead.
I mean, that doesn't sound bad. Oh
yeah, you can get rid of Dragon Age and go just fly on a dragon.
Yeah, let's check it out. This looks really cool.
Let's see, what's the next one? So this would never be able to happen again because just the amount of licensing that it would require, it would just be impossible to do now. But like, I genuinely miss the Def Jam, pseudo wrestling like / fighting games that they did that were just so goddamn fun. Like those were the good days where it was just like in the same way that like the old like N64 era like wrestling games, whether it was WWF or WCW at the time, like just the top down sort of like wrestling games back then, whereas Def Jam Fight for New York especially, like that's where it was really at its best. It was just like, hey, let's just do that, put a shit ton of weapons, some crazy rings, there's like, you know, areas where you can like throw people in front of a moving train, and then also you can do that while fighting a Snoop Dogg, because why the fuck not?
Why
Doesn't
not?
that sound like a great old time? Why, yes, it did. Why, yes, I did. And it was a fucking great time. And they've haven't even re-released them, which is also, again, it's probably the licensing, but like the fact that no one's even tried to replicate it because so many people talk about these games. Like for the longest time, AEW with their newest game, their first wrestling game, it was mimicking that sort of Ukes wrestling style. And like people have been clamoring about that for like over a decade, and the fact that no one also looked at this and went, we can kind of do this in a very like obviously not needing to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in licensing fees to just like make a bunch of creative characters for this shit and do something similar to that. I'm surprised because like it's the kind of game that like if you were into either wrestling or fighting games, you knew about this game in that era because it was very well talked about, especially because of all the characters, like obviously Sean Paul, Method Man, Redman, like there were a bunch of different like rappers and such in there. I think there were also like a few like, I think Carmen Electra was in that if I'm not mistaken. Like there was a few like women in there too.
Maybe.
And like word of mouth put this out about a bunch, and it's just one of those things where it's like, man, not even like trying to mimic that in like some sort of indie, like here's our own spin on it sort of deal. Really? Not even that? Kind of disappointed.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a fun game. That was such a good party game.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, for my next one, I do have more JRPGs, but I'm going to go away from that for a moment to give Kaylan a break. And this one's interesting because I don't think it's forgotten yet, but I know now that unfortunately it is
like the dirt's being poured on it.
It's already started, yeah, because so it's Spec Ops: The Line. And the reason I'm saying that is because it has been delisted from all stores and everything. Like the licenses, whatever it was, is gone, and you know it's a one and done, and you can't get it anymore. So I have it on Steam, luckily already, so I can go back and play it, and should be there forever, kind of. Hopefully, I guess that's how Steam works, but you know, only time will tell. But yeah, like you can't even pick this up on PC anymore, unless of course you go and find it in the not legal ways, I guess. It kind of sucks because that's to me one of the most. It's like a masterpiece in storytelling. The game is good and it was fun, but I mean, it was the storytelling of the characters and stuff while you were going through that. It seemed like just your typical, like, oh, this is a third person Call of Duty story driven game. And then all of a sudden you're like a bit into it and you're like, holy shit, this is not what I was expecting. This
it's
is
also
incredible.
A game that like it's hard to play more than once because once you've understood like what the game actually is, like a lot of that emotion's taken out of it. Because it's more of a game that like if you don't know anything about it going in, it completely blindsides you.
And it did. it blindsided me hard. But I do agree.
All I have to say is phosphorus, and you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Going back and playing it would be difficult, but I feel bad for anybody where it's like they haven't played it and now they'll never really have that chance for the most part. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I don't know. I feel like it they need to bring it back somehow. I don't know.
It'd also be nice to see like more of these kind of games that are more than just like, because again, like we talk about, like I talked about with Call of Duty with its campaign, be like, they don't take risks anymore. Like apart from like, oh, here's this quirky new level with zombies combat mixed into it, but like they don't tell good stories anymore. They're not telling stories that actually like take some chances. Because again, especially in this climate, people just don't want to be that political right now. So like no one's really testing the bar anymore. But like this game, it's not remembered for its gameplay. Let's say that out loud. Like it's remembered because it fucking tests you. And I don't mean difficulty wise. I mean it tests your ability to want to continue on with something because it hits a lot of heavy notes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, such a good game. Such a good game.
Kaylan,
all right, Kaylan, what do you got?
So this is a random one. This is one that I remember from like being like a teenager and stuff playing. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this. Did you guys ever hear of the Kingdom Under Fire games?
I know that name.
It sounds familiar, yeah.
So basically, this is a fantasy-esque hack and slash kind of game. So you're playing as one character, but the weird crux is that you're like a commander in an army. So it's like a third person like action adventure, but with like moving battalions and launching them. So like you'd be out in the field like hacking orcs and goblins and stuff, but at the same time you'd have archers like hiding in the bushes or hiding in the trees that would then like launch. So like think kind of like Dynasty Warrior toned down with a squad based sort of strategy game.
Yeah. I do remember seeing this. I never played it, but I do remember seeing it.
Yeah. And like I played it, it was really good, and it had a wicked soundtrack, like hardcore heavy metal kind of stuff. It was really good, but it was hard as hell. Like I don't remember ever finishing this game, but it was a blast to play.
So the Souls of Dynasty war games.
Who even made this game? Like I'm gonna take a look and see who made it. Yeah.
Not gonna lie, I kind of miss just like a simple game like that. Just like going out there, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's, you know.
I mean, indie kind of fills that void now. I mean, for God's sakes, like I'm right now like in between like Persona 3. Once in a blue moon, I'll turn on this game called Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop, and it's just a roguelite about being a space mechanic.
Fun fact with that game, in my one-on-one with my boss today, who is also a gamer, she's like more like cozy games or indie games only. She doesn't play anything big by any publishers. She was selling me on that game today, my boss.
That's funny.
Yeah, I wish listed it right after my my meeting with her.
Yeah, it's funny.
The game
as a mouse and keyboard game, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it looks wacky. It's just
so the
like,
developer of Kingdom Under Fire is Fantagram, which is apparently a Korean-based development studio.
Wow.
Never heard of these guys before, but
no.
Yeah. And this game was made in like 2001.
Yeah, that looks...
Okay, this one... Sorry, the one I'm thinking of is Kingdom Under Fire: The Crusaders, which came out in 2004. So like, 21 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a bit. Been a hot minute.
Great game. All right, let's get one more, guys, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll put one more in. I'm gonna go and throw like the real like out of left field on this one. I think I might have actually mentioned this on the show once before, but Outlaw Golf, which would have been like Xbox PS2 era.
I remember that.
Which was like essentially the M-rated version of Mario Golf or Hot Shots, because it's a game where like it wasn't just golf; it was also like it beyond like maps. Like the first course is like a New Jersey golf course where you're playing like right next to the New Jersey Turnpike, and the characters you have are all like the most like stereotypical things possible. Like you have your, convict who their caddy is like their parole officer. You have a pair of strippers, like, and it goes all the way with it. And they also have like this composure meter, which depending on how good you're doing, if you're doing really, really well, it means obviously you're going to have an easier time, hitting the shots the way you want to. But if it's going really, really badly, you start getting closer. Like your character starts to change on how they're talking. They start getting more belligerent with their caddy and such. And there's a thing you can use called beating, which you start fighting you beat the shit out of your caddy, and it gets your composure back up. It's one of those games. There's no goddamn way you could make it now.
No, you could not.
But like, it's just one of those games where it's like, man, something that just was completely different from everything else on the market, taking something that was being done and just going polar opposite with it. And honestly, as a golf game, it was pretty decent too. Like, it's not like it was, all about just, the beating the shit out of your caddy, but like, it was genuinely funny too. Like the crude humor level of like funny that you expect from like comics around that time too. Even, I don't know if you ever heard of Dave Attell. He is essentially like the commentator of that game, and he is like a full-on like stand-up comedian. And like, man, he's one of those guys that he was well known for handling people who would just shout stuff at him randomly. Like what's the fucking name of people that do this?
Hecklers.
Thank you. I don't know why I was blanking on that. He was very well known in his time for just being like, you don't heckle him because he will put you to sleep if you try. So like, it's just one of those things where you could never make it now, but goddamn, like that's one of those things where I love the fact that it's just a game that took something that you see with like other games out there and just go, you know what? What if we made it so that like only a very small amount of people would want to play this because it's very mature?
Hot Shots Golf, but make it Grand Theft Auto.
We're like, Hot Shots Golf.
Chris, what's one more game that's been forgotten?
All right. Well, this is one that I have to always mention when I get the chance, because just in case the developers are listening, and that's Fantavision from PS2. It's no. I've never actually played it, and I don't need to. It's fireworks. I have to go with Xenogears. I just have to. Like I've said it a million times. JRPG. Square Enix on PS1. I know it's not going to ever get a sequel proper because the developers left. There was all this problems with Square Enix and the developers of the game and everything, so they left Square Enix. They started making Xenoblade and Xeno Saga and all their own other Xeno games that were like kind of this game, but they couldn't be because of licensing. So this is definitely a game that's like in licensing hell. Plus, I really don't know how popular it was. You know, my circle of friends know it very well, but that doesn't mean that everybody does. But again, it's a JRPG where it has an incredible story that talks about like psychological stuff with like id and stuff like that. But as well, the characters get into these ancient mechs and also have JRPG battles in the mech. So sometimes you're a normal sized person and sometimes you're actually in a mech, and the entire battle system changes depending on what type of fight you're in and stuff. So just super cool. The graphics are amazing. It was like the whole 2.5D before it was cool now, because all the 3D textures were polygons, but the actual characters were pixel art in a 3D world. So Octopath Traveler, but in the 90s. Yeah, it's like one of my favorite JRPGs of all time. I still want to play it badly. It's not on anything. You got to buy a PS1 disc and get a PS3 or PS2 or PS1 that can play that PS1 game, or, you know, try and get it illegally, I guess. But that's a huge pain in the butt because PS1 had multiple discs and emulation with multiple discs is the worst. So yeah, I just need this game back, or more in the series. You know, release this as just some remaster or something, just so it can be on modern platforms, and then give me Xenogears 2. That would be amazing. But yeah, I've always got to throw that game out there.
Nice. Yeah, this looks really cool.
Ratty out of stories too, because I know we're both into that one.
Yes, that's also on my list. I just didn't want to. There's so many JRPGs on my list.
Oh God, yeah.
For me, I'm going to go into racing categories. So we always talk about like LA Rush. We talk about, you know, Cruising USA and stuff. But I feel like one game that doesn't get enough attention from that era is Road Rash. If you guys remember that
Rash,
one.
yes.
If you're not aware, this is a game where you are riding along in a motorbike in like this race with other bikers. But the crux of it is like, one, you could fall off your bike, and two, you can knock out your opponents. So you could be driving along and like be kicking your opponent's bikes, which don't think too much of it, because like I'm not a biker, and if you are, like, correct me, but like it would not work out well for you to kick a bike as well as you're driving.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Gravity
you can go around and like
both of
kick other bikes. You can have like chains and stuff and like whip other bikers and knock them off their bike. And I just have really good memories playing with this. And you get knocked off, you have to run back to your bike. And I remember playing this game with my sister, and like we used to play, I forget which version it was, but we were somehow able to play it split screen on her PC with one keyboard, and like one of us would have like the arrow buttons, the other one would like use like WASD. And I would just remember constantly kicking her off her bike, and she's like, "I just want to race," and I'm like, "No, that's not how we play this. Like,
that's not Road Rash."
So yeah, I you know, I'm not saying this is the greatest game of all time, but I just remember playing it at the time and being like, "This is awesome." And it looked a lot more realistic at the time than it does now if you're watching the video feed. But yeah,
I mean, it's a Sega Genesis game.
Yeah.
This is Hotline Miami, but like you're only driving. That's what I'm seeing here.
So yeah, that's just one I wanted to
pick.
give a shout out because I got good memories of that one. But yeah, Sean, thanks for taking us through that trip of like games that we've forgotten. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are watching this, leave us a comment, go into the Discord, share some of the games forgotten to time that you have fond memories of. We'd really appreciate it. And hey, if you're like, what, you guys have a Discord? I didn't know about it. I'm not in a Discord. Well, what are you doing? Go down to link tr.ee/PixelPlay Podcast. You can find the link to the Discord. Join us there, and then tell us your favorite games lost to the sands of time. We'd really appreciate it. And if you want to hear what we've done before, we have a whole backlog of episodes. You can find them on YouTube. You can find them on Spotify. You can find them wherever you get your podcasts. And with that being said, I am one of your co-hosts, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, joined as always by my co-host Adam at CS Radical and Chris at Gin and Chris. And you know what? This is fun. Let's do it again next week. Bye for now.